Hey, it's the Profit Answer Man, Rocky Lalvani. If you're new to the podcast, check out my interview with Mike Michalowicz. It's episode number 2. If you want to hear about each chapter in the Profit First book, go back and listen to episodes 3 through 13. Episode 1 is the why and how. On the Profit Answer Man, we learn money mastery without all the complicated accounting mumbo-jumbo using a simple system. Your accountant is busy documenting your transactions and creating a rearview mirror of what happened. My guess is you don't even look at the reports they sent you. If you're like most business owners, you struggle with this, and it's not your fault. We aren't taught money in school, and accountants aren't taught how to be profitable. The Profit First system created by Mike Michalowicz works, and he certified me to help you implement the system in your business. Remember, the new equation is sales minus profit equals expenses. Let's face it, without cash flow, you can't pay your employees, buy needed materials, or pay your mortgage and support your family. I help you to do that and more, so you can focus on the parts of the business you love and receive the rewards for your labor and investment into your business. The stronger you are as a business owner, the more jobs you create, the better we are as a country. Small business owners are the backbone of America, and for that, you deserve to be well rewarded. Just remember, more revenue does not equal more profit. That's why we focus on the bottom line. Too often, what we don't know comes back to bite us. Or maybe we know, but we just kick the can down the road and ignore it. I know most people have an aversion to lawyers, but they can also keep us safe and out of trouble. A little work up front can save us from a lot of misery later. Do you know where your business and intellectual property stands from a legal standpoint? Do you keep up to date on your trademarks and your company filings? Sometimes we forget, and they won't send us a notice. Or you moved and it gets lost. That's our topic for today. Let's meet Jeremy Streten. He is a successful entrepreneur and a lawyer applying his passion and experience to help entrepreneurs and small and medium business-sized business owners to succeed in their business so they can live the life they want to live. He's got an 18-year legal background as a business lawyer and 10 of those years as a business owner. Jeremy has learned a thing or two about business as well. Jeremy's been on various television shows, podcasts, and radio interviews. He's also a regular content creator for websites around the world. Let's meet Jeremy. Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, Jeremy Streten. It's great to have you join us today.
Great to be here, Rocky.
Can you share a little bit about your business and what you do?
Yeah, so I run 3 different businesses, Rocky. The first is a law firm that I started about 10 years ago now, at the time we're recording this. The second is a consultancy business where I run masterminds and coach. And the third is the business legal lifecycle, which is all about making legal advice accessible for SMEs.
3 businesses must keep you busy, and then you've got to keep the numbers straight. So you are a Profit First fan. How did you learn about Profit First?
So it's actually through the mastermind that you and I are part of. We read Profit First in the mastermind. We also, my business coach, who I now work with, he recommended that to me a long time ago, and I never read it, even though he recommended it to me. And I, and in reading in Profit First, in the mastermind, I was shocked at how Mike described my business exactly in the opening chapters, and I went, "Oh no, I should have read this book years ago."
So the problems you were experiencing are the same ones in the book. Could you share a little bit? Like, what was life like before Profit First?
Yeah, it was really around that. Is your business a cash-eating monster? And it is. The law firm in particular was the first business I ran, and it certainly is a cash-eating monster. It's expenses are constantly going out. We're always stuck for cash. We're always running around trying to pay tax. People might have guessed from my accent that I'm from Australia, over here you've got a goods and services tax, which is a consumption tax, and we're always behind the eight ball trying to pay those things. So, and we never paid ourselves a profit. And so that's where Profit First was a game changer for us, that we're actually able to pay ourselves a profit for the work that we were doing, and then to have the reason to use that money for fun and for doing something that made business all worthwhile. So I'm a massive fan of Profit First, as you and I talked about before. And that was really what drove me to use Profit First. Was the first couple of chapters just resonated with me so well.
So what were some of the fun things you did?
So I love traveling. So traveling over to America, traveling to the UK. My sister lives in London, so I get to do that. Basically taking holidays. And with my other business, my consulting business, I actually use that to fund going out for nice dinners and things like that, because the profit's a little bit less, because the income's a little bit less. But I love using it for going out and having a nice dinner and having a nice trip where I can. And that's been really rewarding, because it makes the effort worth it when you get the reward at the end of the day, which I never had the reason for previously.
And that's the thing, you are in business, you take a risk, you work hard, you deserve to be rewarded. And if you're not being rewarded, then we have to fix that and make sure that it's possible that you are. Have you found it difficult to implement, or has it been pretty simple for you?
It was difficult to start with. It's hard to remember back in the early days too much, but I remember that with the law firm, it was difficult, just from a point of view of knowing all the money and putting the system in place. We were running it ourselves, and now our office manager runs it for us. And we have a cash flow document that she provides us each week. Originally it was a bit difficult, but once we got through it, it's been really good. And the other thing it's helped us do is to make decisions about the business. So we opened up a couple of extra accounts other than just the OPEX, and have an employee expenses account and a rent account. And we had some underperforming employees, and that really showed up very quickly when we used the system, because we didn't have the expenses to pay the money to pay their expenses, I should say. And so what that allowed us to do was to quickly identify a problem, get to the root of it, and then make a decision, which was, in that case, offboarding a couple of employees who just weren't up to the scratch of what we needed. So we've used it in a number of different ways. But it's been great for letting us make decisions.
And that's what it does. I was just talking with somebody today, and that was the big thing. It gives you an early warning signal that you've got problems in your business long before it will ever show up in the accounting software, or when you have the big pile of money, it all kind of gets mushed together. You really can't see it. And with the system, you have total clarity, and you know immediately when problems are occurring, so you can fix them before they become a mess.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
And we're actually here to talk about fixing some legal problems as well. And with that, one of the things I've heard you say is you should be proactive with legal issues instead of reactive, and that most people tend to be reactive with attorneys. Can you tell me what is that all about?
Yeah, so in my experience, and I've been an attorney for nearly 20 years after coming out of uni. I still am one. I don't practice too much at the moment. I do my other businesses more so, and I'm just an owner of the law firm. But what I noticed, and what my big frustration with being a lawyer was around people coming to us when they had a problem that could have been solved if they had just got legal advice before the problem arose, or when they started their business, or at any point up until that time. There were two matters that I handled around the 2014, 2015 time that were really frustrating for me. One gentleman almost lost $1 million of his own money because he didn't understand the legal side of his business and didn't get advice. And another one did lose over $1 million of other people's money in a property development that went wrong. And if they just got legal advice at the beginning, it would have solved all of the problems straight up. In fact, those people would never have gone into business if they had just spoken to someone who could help them out and work out their goals moving forward. So I've become very passionate in that, trying to help business owners to understand that there is a way to prevent the problems before they arise. There is a way to put the chocks in place of your business to stop things from happening. And one of the big frustrations for me, Rocky, is that when people, when problems occur, they go, I wish I'd done it earlier. But when they come to you earlier, often they don't see the saving, and they never see the saving because they've prevented the problem before it arises. So the business legal life cycle is there to help educate business owners that there is a different way and that they can solve the problems before they arise.
You know, it's funny because we do the same thing with Profit First. I can't tell you how many people go, I wish I had seen this in the beginning. It would have saved me so many headaches in my business. And these are the things. These are the simple things that you have to do in business. But too often we're just blind to them because we don't even know that they exist. So how can people better understand or figure out where their blind spots are?
So it's really around the education, Rocky. So it's really around learning what law applies to your business. It's really tempting when we go to barbecues. We call them barbecues over here. I think you call them barbecues too, with friends, and people give advice based on their situation. And what the problem with that is that whilst it's really well-intentioned advice, it's not particular to your circumstances. And each different matter and each different scenario might require slightly different legal advice. So it's around the education around what the law is and how it applies to you. And that's why I wrote the book, The Business Legal Lifecycle, because it goes through and explains in plain English what people need to do from a legal perspective, who they need to speak to, and has like a plan of attack of what you need to do going forward. So it's around being proactive and educating yourself on what you need to do. And more we see business owners who do that, who understand the legal aspects, don't fall into those common traps that really are, for me as an attorney trying to help business owners, I should say, and lawyers, to be proactive, that they can avoid.
So I know you mentioned you're in Australia.
Yes.
For our U.S. listeners, does this apply to them?
Absolutely. So I have written the Australian version of the Business Legal Lifecycle, which was released many years ago now, 5 years ago. My goal is to help business owners around the world to understand their legal advice, and in doing so, to help them to build better businesses and really stop businesses from failing. So I went to the UK, which is, whether you agree with it or not, it's the foundation of most law around the world, because the Brits, they colonized much of the world, and a lot of the world has their legal systems. So I partnered with a lawyer in the UK to help me rewrite the book into UK law. And then the next place for me to come to was the US. And actually the mastermind that we're both part of, Rocky, I joined that to help me find a lawyer in the US, which I did, to help me rewrite the book to US law. So all of what we do works in those three countries, and we're looking at expanding it further as we go forward as well.
So what are the big areas that people have blind spots, and what type of things come up?
It's really around, there's probably three main areas. The first one is actually understanding the structure that they're entering into their business with. So, what is the LLC? What is the structure that they need to put in place? The second one is contracts, and really understanding what a contract means and what should go into a contract when you've got clients or employees. And the third one that I see people fall in a lot is intellectual property. So there's a lot of misconceptions about intellectual property. There are variations amongst the different countries, but there are there's a big misunderstanding in the community around what intellectual property applies and what people can do to protect their intellectual property.
So there are some specific examples you can share with us, just so people have it. Like, people are like, oh, I think I'm all good. Like, what do they need to know?
Yeah, so with the structures, it's really understanding how the different structure will apply to your business and what it actually protects. And whether it be the US, the UK, or Australia, the structures they're called something different, but they are all very similar. And so it's really understanding what protection that structure is going to give you for your business. And I mean, there's plenty of examples of people who, they might start a business as a sole trader just in their own name. But what they don't understand is that the buck stops with them. They're liable for everything for the business. Everything's in their name. Every liability, any mistake they make, any negligence is all in their name. And the reason that we have corporations or LLCs, or we have companies, they're called proprietary limited companies in Australia, and they use limited liability partnerships in the UK mainly. The reason that we have those is to separate that liability from the business owner, so that if something does go wrong, then the business owner is protected. And all too often we see people, they're really keen to get in there and start their business, Rocky, and that's great, but they don't think about those legal things. They think, oh, I'll just sort that out later, or my lawyer will sort that out later, or I'll get a lawyer later. But doing it beforehand stops lots of problems in the future if you do it right from the beginning. So yeah, there's plenty of examples of that out there, which I'm sure you've seen as well in what you do.
Very much so. What about customers? Like, why do I have to worry about legal with my customers?
The reason for that, Rocky, is that when you first start working with someone, the relationship's usually great. There's a high degree of trust, and everyone understands based on probably initial conversation or maybe an email or two about what they're going to do and who's going to do what in the business. The problem comes 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 3 years down the track, when people's lives change. Everyone's constantly growing and evolving and changing what they want to do and changing how they want to do things. And when those circumstances change, people's understanding or recollection of what happened when people first engaged changes as well. So it might be that you are to be paid up front, and then the client says, oh, look, I don't have the cash right now to do the work now, but so let's just, I'll pay you afterwards, or I'll pay you during the event. When those rules aren't set out in the beginning, a creep comes into the scope, a creep comes into the payment terms, and things go wrong down the track. And because nothing's documented, it becomes very difficult to go and enforce an agreement that you thought you had if the understanding on the other side was different, or they say that it was different. So having a contract early on, I always say, is it's part of the skill that you learn as a startup business owner to have that conversation with someone. I do a lot of coaching, and we don't do so much startups. Where we do, it's one of the things that we always make sure that we talk to them about is get your contracts right early, because good contracts make great relationships, because they define the scope of what you need to do.
And I know for a lot of my clients, they don't get paid up front, which means they become a bank. And if you're going to be the bank, you should get paid interest, or make sure that your pricing is appropriate to cover your banking relationship, where you're loaning people money essentially until they pay you. And the longer that goes on, the harder it is to get paid. And I've also found people only hear what they want to hear. And so that creates for misunderstandings. I thought you were going to do this, or I thought this, or your advertising said this, and so I assumed I was getting that. Well, that was an add-on. Sure, you can get it, but it's not part of whatever the initial conversation was. One of the other things that you mentioned is intellectual property. So can you define for us what intellectual property is?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's one of those nebulous legal terms that is so argued over in court, and lawyers try to make it all complicated. But I think the simple way to think about it is intellectual property are the intangibles, so the things that you can't touch, values that you have in your business. So it might be your name, it might be your logo, so your trademark, it might be the systems and processes of how you do what you do in your business. It's those intangible things that are the real differentiator between your business and someone else's business. That's probably the simplest way that I think of it. There's lots of legal definitions. I'm sure the attorneys listening might go, oh, there's a lot more to it than that, and there is, but that's a nice overview of what intellectual property is.
And I think the business name is one. I've had quite a few instances where people have come up with a business name thinking it was cool, only to not realize it was trademarked or used by somebody else, and they did not have the rights to do that. And if you are starting your business and you just spent a lot of money building everything around that, that money is all gone now. And so you essentially have to start over. So making sure that you do that right and you have the legal ability to do that is very, very important.
Just on that, Rocky, I have an example of a client. He started his business and over 20 years built it up as a bakery here in Brisbane, in Australia. But you hear these stories from all over the world. And he built it up over 20 years, built it to 27 stores, and came to me because he wanted to franchise the business. And so the first thing you've got to do when you franchise a business is to register your trademark, which he'd never done, and because no one ever told him to do it. And it turned out that there were about 15 other businesses that had similar names. So he had to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars rebranding his entire store network. Now, some of it needed that rebranding, all because he didn't register the trademark when he first started. And so it can be a very costly mistake in not protecting your intellectual property sooner.
There's actually a local restaurant here who had a name of a large franchise. But because they had the name before the franchise eventually ended up paying them a lot of money to get their name off of their restaurant, which was a totally different restaurant. But these things get expensive.
These things get expensive, and the different circumstances can arise to different outcomes. And that's obviously a good outcome for that restaurant. But there's plenty of examples where you see people not go the other way. You know, there's plenty of examples where the big restaurant comes in and takes over and forces the smaller business to change its name. So yeah, this is the kind of thing that if listeners are concerned about, go and see your attorney and talk to them about it, because it's something that they can easily help with.
And so I think one of the things people don't realize in the court system is it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. If your opposing party has a lot of money and they're going to fight it, it's going to cost you a lot of money, even if you're right. And so doing things appropriately to begin with can help prevent a lot of those problems.
And that's a really important point, Rocky, that when you go to court, you've got your side of the story, the other side's got their side of the story, and a judge will always look for something in the middle. So, I always tell my clients, don't go to court. If you can avoid it, don't go to court, because you have no control over the outcome. Whereas if you can come to a resolution that you can accept in a dispute, take it, because it's probably going to be better than what you're going to get going to court. And no one ever wins. Well, not no one, I shouldn't say no one, but it's very rare that someone wins outright when they go to court.
And it's cheaper too, right?
Absolutely. You end up, and it's cheaper, but it's also emotionally cheaper too. The amount of people that I've helped through court proceedings, just the emotional draining experience and the stress that goes with the uncertainty and all the rest of that, it's actually very real, not just from a cost point of view, but from an emotional point of view, to resolve it if you can. Because the emotion, I've seen people have breakdowns over court cases, not my clients, but I've seen in other scenarios where people, I talk to other lawyers where people just can't cope with it, and they break down because of the emotional strain. So resolve it where they can.
Not to mention, if you're busy with the lawsuit, you've taken the eye off the ball of your business. And so Absolutely. If you are not focused on your business, then you end up with business problems that can cause you considerable trouble. So prevention is much, much better than trying to solve a problem after the fact. And so well worth it. Is there anything else that you'd like to share that we haven't gotten a chance to talk about?
No, other than just for the listeners, there's a lot to the legal advice. There's a lot to what people need from a legal perspective. There's lots of great resources out there. We have lots on our website, the Business Legal Lifecycle, or just businesslegallifecycle.com. We have a test that people can do that goes through and identifies where they are in the life cycle of their business and what they're missing and what they need to do for the future. That's something that we're very proud of, and it's really helped a lot of business owners to really move the needle in their business and to reduce those risks. So if the listeners, as a thank you for having me on, Rocky, if the listeners want to go to businesslegallifecycle.com/profit answer man, there's a page there, and they'll get instructions on how to do a 50% off that test that they can do. So it's half price on the $97. What's that, $48.50? And they can do that, and they can see the legal blind spots that they need in their business.
Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for the special offer for them. It's always nice, $50 and you solve problems. It's one of those no-brainer kind of things. Do it early and be done with it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Rocky.
Do you feel like you need a legal checkup? Jeremy offered us a great deal to see if we're in a good place. I say an ounce of prevention solves a pound of worry. Too often we're too busy to worry about these issues until they bite us, and then it takes up too much time and too much money to fix it. Do it right up front, and you don't have to suffer later. The same is true for your business finances. Set up the system properly, and it will let you know when you have problems long before you normally would see it. Remember, you don't need more resources, you need to be more resourceful. We focus on the bottom line. If you want a done-for-you service, you can have me as your Chief Profitability Officer. Because you have your zone of genius and want to spend your time doing what you love. I only work with a handful of clients, so they get my full attention. I work with business owners who have or are growing to $500,000 to $5 million in revenue. You can use the scheduling link in the show notes to get on my calendar for a good fit conversation to see if I'm the right person to support you and how I can help you. If you want to learn about living the life of your dreams, check out my other podcast, Richer Soul. As we close out, let's repeat the mantra. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. Have an abundant and profitable week.